So Becca, I'm going to start with you, but then we'll rotate around. So many organizations are making plans to continue some form of remote and hybrid work arrangements into the foreseeable future. And as we know, the pandemic-related health and safety concerns are subsiding. What are the key factors in driving these plans? Becca?
So in many cases, organizations have found that it can be effective after the initial challenge of transitioning employees online and figuring out how everyone was going to come together and kind of collaborate. Organizations and employees realize this can be an effective and sometimes a more efficient way of getting work done. With that in mind, organizations have become sensitive to the fact that many employees have come to appreciate the flexibility of when and even more so where to work. And so this is a way that they can honor that while also being effective in getting the work they want done. One other point that came up in a few conversations that I had was looking at the future and thinking about how to attract talent. Organizations have recognized this as an opportunity to be able to access talent pools that aren't necessarily going to be available if they're sort of geographically restricted or requiring people to come into the office, every day or even on a regular basis.
Good. Okay. Brad, what would you add?
I think Becca makes some great points about how this experience, I think, has really kind of shifted a lot of views around remote work, and I think has served to dispel many of the myths that I think companies had around remote work, that, for example, employees couldn't be as productive if they were working remotely. And I think we've seen in many cases productivity be maintained or even increased during the pandemic. But I also think, part of this is being driven from the employee side as well, right? I mean, I think this experience going through the pandemic has really kind of opened Pandora's box, so to speak, with regard to remote work. And, even prior to the pandemic, we saw that, surveys showing that employees had a preference for more flexibility in their work arrangements, et cetera. And I think the pandemic has, further reinforced that. And one of the working groups that I ran, I actually asked participants, in their companies, what percentage of their employees do they expect to want more flexibility and more remote work post-pandemic? And across the board, across companies, they said a majority, right? It was for some, maybe 50 to 60%, others, it was upwards of 75%. But again, I think what this is indicating is that they're hearing from their companies this desire for more remote work options, more flexibility. And to Becca's point about kind of talent and recruitment and retention, I think as companies look at how to, attract the best employees and retain them, they're going to have to be sensitive to those employee preferences. So again, I think it's partly driven from the company, but also from the employee side as well.
Yeah, employees definitely have a louder voice at this point. Chris, what would you add?
Forgot I muted myself. I think I heard basically the same things in the working groups I did. I think there's a few exceptions. I think one, I think we heard from many companies that leaders are now less forgiving about productivity lulls. So, as people work remotely and they're trying to do more things in their lives, whether that's teaching kids or having their kids at home or caring for adults at home, I think there's some fatigue on the part of leaders who just want that stuff to be over and want everybody back to work full time. So I do think there's some resistance now that we're in theory through the pandemic and we're starting to think about bringing people back to work, back to the office. I think there's leaders that want their team back. I think there's concerns around culture and socialization of new employees. Yes, we can access them, but there's lots of concerns around how do I actually, as a leader, socialize these people to my team? How do I make them feel part of the, so I think there's concerns about how to do this. And so I think what I heard from a lot of companies is really thinking about the who, what, when, where kind of questions around as we think about that this is the new reality, that people want this flexibility. How do we do it? How many days do we do it? Who gets to do it? What work should be done remote versus what should be done in the office? Are there days we bring people all back to the office? And if so, what's the work we get scheduled those days? So I think there's a lot of complexity here in the how do we do this now that we recognize that remote can be good, and that employees want it. I think now it's about how do we do it, which I didn't hear a lot of great answers to yet.
And I'm sure our attendees are looking for those answers